You hear me? Can you hear that okay? Can I move this just back here so that I can see these good people in the front rows? Turn in your Bibles, please. We're going to go to this near the end. Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. We will be going to that in a few minutes. David has said that I'm from Scotland, born and bred. I have driven about 10,000 miles in the last 5 weeks, just speaking to different churches and telling them about what's going on in the church in Scotland. It's really exciting. Now, I want you to understand as much of this as you can, because you all talk a little bit funny. And if you can't understand my accent, or if I go too fast, because sometimes when I get excited, we speak a little bit faster, someone just wave and I will slow down. I always worry at this point someone's going to wave right away, but we're good to go. So I will try and keep it slow for you. That's my family up on the screen there. My wife in the middle, Melanie, and our daughter, Nicole. That is, have we got any Campbells? Any Campbells in the congregation? Any McDonald's? Okay, we're okay then. The Campbells and the McDonald's had a big fallout in that valley, and Campbell's slaughtered the McDonald's. Anyway, so if we've got none, we're okay, we're good to go. About 500 years ago that happened, and one of the hotels in that valley still has a sign up on the door saying, "No Campbell's welcome." So that's where the McDonald's live. But anyway, that's our only child. Melanie and I planted the church in Cumbernauld. Now, I'm going to leave some of these with you, so feel free to take them away. I've got more in the car if you want them. And we'll tell you something about what's going on, but I'm going to give you the 20-minute version, 20 or 30 minutes, maybe. We'll see how it goes. But you can have a look at this, and I'll leave them here so that you can take that away with you. When I graduated from David Lipscomb back in 1987, there was no congregation of the Lord's Church in Cumbernauld. It was a town of about 55,000 people, no congregation. It was what we call a new town. Glasgow, you're familiar, you'll have heard of Glasgow and Edinburgh, okay? And those towns were becoming overpopulated. So they built 5 new towns around them, set target populations, encouraging young families to move there, and they were close enough still to commute into Glasgow and Edinburgh for work. But it meant they could start working on making those 2 cities a more pleasant place to live. And that was very successful. It worked. In fact, when we got there in 1987, and Cumbernauld was established in 1957. So when we got there in 1987, the average age of the town was 25 years old. Okay? A lot of young families in there, a lot of young people. So when we went to plant the church there, and you'll see, is this working? Or are you doing it? There you go. So that's my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, and Jack and Maureen Jack was the preacher where I became a Christian. I didn't grow up in the church. I wasn't brought up in the church. But where I became a Christian, he was a preacher, obviously, eventually married his daughter, and it was Jack and Maureen that earmarked us to plant the church there in Cumbernauld. And this is Ronnie and Mary Nielsen. They were the first Christians in Cumbernauld. All right, they were baptized in 1985, and they were just having basically Bible studies up until we got there in 87 to plant the church. Right, so they were very glad of that. Now he's glad to get rid of me. He's glad I'm over. Ronnie's about this height, and he sits behind me for worship, and he can't see the song screen, so he loves it when I'm gone. He can worship uninterrupted. But fine couple. I'd love for you to come over and meet this church family that we have. It's absolute fantastic family. I worship with them while I'm here. I worship with them on Zoom because they're 6 hours ahead. So at 5 this morning I was worshiping with them, and then it finished just in time for me to hit the road and go to New Concord this morning. Great family. We've got 13 different nationalities. None from China yet. None. We've got some Filipinos. But 13 nationalities, and 40% of our congregation are 18 years old or under. Still a very young congregation. Being a church plant, not many second-generation Christians, mostly first. I've put this up because I want you to understand the kind of environment that we went to plant the church in. So Western Europe in general, and Scotland is no different, had a real, what do you call it? They weren't interested in God. So at best, they weren't interested. At worst, they hated it. My dad was one of those. He hated religion, hated God, hated any kind of church, everything like that. I won't tell you the whole story. He later became a Christian and an elder in the church, but that's how it started. And I've got some theories about why that happened, but this was a little hall that we used to rent, and it was, to try and give you an idea, it was probably the size of, it was smaller than this set of pews, okay? So it's probably a bit as wide, but not as long. Maybe from here to the back pew would be the size of it. And the local youth would often smash the windows. Sometimes we would have physical threats towards, especially our women, the sisters, as they were going in. That would happen. So we're in that kind of environment. That happened one Sunday morning. So we rent the hall, and we don't rent it exclusively. And when we went in to worship that Sunday morning, that door was clean. And then we came out, and then it had all the graffiti and obscenities on it, obviously. So that's what's happening. If you go and knock on the door in Scotland, what they're going to say is, no thank you, not interested, I have my own religion. They almost quote it. And you can, and we'll say, and I would say, oh great, where do you go? They don't go. Nobody goes. I was born a Protestant, or you would call it Presbyterian. If the others are born Catholic, and the Catholics and Protestants hate each other, and they don't know why, because they never go. It's almost like a nationality or an identity rather than a faith. All right? So they just don't want to talk to you. So what we did was we started working with the young people. And we decided if we can work with the young people, everything we do is about building relationships. And every one of those relationships we build, it's intentional so that we can reach out to them and their families with the gospel. So if we take these parents of all these young people we're working with, they think we just run a youth club with a Bible class before it. They think we just take their kids swimming on a Friday because we like being with the kids. And we do. We love these kids, which is why they kept coming. But every one of those things is intentional to build a relationship with those children and get into the lives of their families. It's slow, but it's what's been working. And many of those parents are Christians because of that kind of work. Sometimes what happens is some of these kids will have been at our Bible class and youth club 30 years ago, and then their grandchildren are now there, and it's the grandchildren who become Christians, and then they maybe even bring them along. So it's really been going well. The youth program grew very quickly. And there's never been a lull since. It's always been strong the whole time. We've been very blessed. We don't do anything fancy. We don't have a magic formula. We just love those kids, love those young people. We let them know that they're important and they matter. We give them the attention that they're not getting elsewhere. And they come and they bring their friends. And it's in a rough area of town. All right, a lot of gang activity, a lot of drug use, most of them from broken homes. I would say over 75% from broken homes, so there's a lot of issues there to deal with, but they love coming, and the parents love us. We have a great reputation in the town. The parents love what we do. We're not stupid, I'll be honest with you. They love what we do because we're glorified babysitters. We take their kids out. We have our Bible class on a Tuesday. I know that's not scriptural, but it works for us. And so we take their kids out of the house for 2.5 hours on a Tuesday. We take them to weekends. We take them to camps. They love that because it's just giving them time off from being a parent. And we know that. We know that's all they're interested in. It's pretty rough. That was the Bible class part. Then we have an hour of games after the Bible class, and it's pretty rough. If you come over and they love nothing more than the adults getting involved in the games, you better protect yourself because they're serious. It's very competitive. But good group of young people that we have. This is the little hall that we were renting, and we were doing everything in there apart from the youth work. So there was too many kids coming. We got up to over 100 kids very quickly, and we couldn't do it in there. We did when it was small, but then now we rent a school, a high school, and we take them there every Tuesday night. But everything else was in there, and we knew that we were going to outgrow that at some point. So we're looking for a place to build at this point, all right? Now, land, if you brace yourself, land in Scotland costs about $1.5 million an acre, okay? We don't buy that kind of land. So if David had a property company, let's going to build homes, construction company, David would go to the council, the city, right? We call it the council, and I only just on this trip realised what you call it. So it's the city. You'd go to the city, you'd buy a piece of land. If it's suitable for homes, it's $1.3 to $1.5 million every acre. All right. You build your homes; they're usually all very close together, as you can imagine, and you set your price and you make your profit. We're never going to get that kind of land. So we will go to the city and look for land that they're not going to let David build homes on. We're very strict on zoning, very strict on construction. So maybe there's a creek somewhere or the roads are in the wrong place and they're going to say, no, we're not happy with 100 homes being built there. So that's the kind of land we go for. And we would normally be looking to get that for about £100,000 an acre, about $150,000. So about 10%. Now, it's never for sale. You have to find it and ask. You apply, they go through the whole rigmarole, and then eventually they say no. Every time they say no. And they'd been saying no to us for 8 or 9 years. We'd been looking. Then they told us back in, I think it was the beginning of 2017 or the end of 2016. They said, no more land, no more cut price land. You're going to have to figure out something else. So, long story short on this bit, because I'm not got time to tell you the whole thing, the city had some land down at an area called Auchenkilns, just like a subdivision. It's right on the second busiest interstate in the country, so the exposure is crazy good, right in the centre of the town, and our town is right in the centre of Scotland. So the location's amazing, but it's going to be expensive. The land just on the other side of the interstate had recently just sold, when we were talking about this, had recently just sold for the equivalent of about $7 million, all right? But the city owns some land there. And the guy took us down because he got fed up of us asking, and he says, I'll come out with you. And he showed us 3 bits the city owned, and we asked about them, and he said no to everyone. I don't know why he took us there, but he said no to everyone. And we asked about a 4th bit of land that was there, and he said that was private. When he says that's private, we're out. If any bit of land is a $1.5 million an acre bit of land, it's this. And none of it's for sale anyway, but we never thought any more about it. So there's a little video. Tim's going to switch it so we've got some audio. There's a 13-minute video of this that there'll be a QR code comes up at the end. And if you want to scan that QR code, you'll be able to watch the longer video in your own time, and I would encourage you'll love it. You'll meet a lot of our congregation, and it will tell you a bit more about the story. But I'm going to tell you that tonight, so you'll be able to just watch the 2-minute one. All right.
When God opens doors, it's more than an opportunity. It's a Jericho moment. Faith in God's faith in us can be intimidating, but the call is to march. God has opened many doors for us in Cumbernauld, but nothing like this. Our search for land was finding enough, but God's provision for us was more than we imagined. Prime real estate worth millions was obtained for a 1/10 of its value. It sits in the heart of our community and Scotland. It gives us the opportunity to be the literal city on a hill that cannot be hid. The rise of secularism has created discordant communities all over the world, and frustration that turns to anger and violence. It is evident that we live in a broken world. People are looking for a better community and a better way. God has already established the way and the community, His church. We believe that God has placed us in a position to rise to this moment that pushes back against the world's confusion. I see people in our church family shining the light of Christ in our community in ways that inspire others to come and know Him. You should hear their stories. We're growing, we're together, we're ready. We are ready for this new chapter for us. in his story. We are so excited for this new chapter to see what God has in mind for us. I feel like we have to ask ourselves, do we ask him to answer only our prayers, or do we rise to his vision?
So you can scan that and watch that in your own time, and as I say, I would love for you to do that. You'll get a lot more of it. What happened was, the bit of land that was owned privately, because the council, the city then told us no more land, we decided we'll find out who owns this and we'll call him. I don't know what possessed us to call him, because there's no way. So we called him up. He lived in Ireland, and we said, we understand that you own the land at Auchincilns, and we're wondering how you would feel about selling us an acre for £100,000, about $150,000. And he laughed on the phone. And he said, guys, this land is worth millions. I'm not going to sell you an acre for £100,000. That was the answer we expected, so nobody was offended, nobody was upset. We hung up the phone, never thought any more about it. 6 months later, that land comes up for sale. So it's been lying there for over 40 years. All of a sudden, it comes up for sale. So I called the realtor, and he told me his name, it was Gregor. And I said, Gregor, I would like for you to send me the listing for the land at Auchincilns that you're selling. I didn't tell him it was the church, because we're not buying it. I was being nosy. I just wanted to see it. So he took my name and address, and he sent me it was like this, actually. It was a nice little brochure, glossy, a few pages, and it was 3 1/3 acres for offers over £3.5 million. You'd probably have to offer 4 1/4, so you're talking just short of 6 million, which is what we expected. And so I looked at it for about 10 minutes, and then I threw it in the trash, and I never thought another thing about it. That was all I wanted to do. 2 months later, Gregor calls me, and as I say, he must think I'm some kind of businessman or something. He couldn't be further from the truth, but he called me and he said, Mr. Barr, I'm calling to see if you're still interested in the land at Auchincilns. And we were down in England at the time. We had our young people down on a trip down in England. And I said, Gregor, that land is too expensive for us. There's no way, we can't afford that. And he said, look, I know that it's listed for offers over £3.5 million, but you could buy it for £1 million. And I'm like, there's still a lot of money. And I'm saying to him, that's still too much for us. I thought, I'm going to ask him. The owner said no, so I asked him. I said, would you sell us an acre? Didn't even say a price this time. And just like that, without even batting an eyelid, says, yep, sell you an acre. So I'm getting excited. I'm thinking we could maybe pull this off. And I called I wasn't going to be home till like 4 a.m. I called the men in the church. I said, you need to meet me down at Auchincilns at 9 a.m. We need to pray. So that was the plan. On the way home from that trip, Gregor calls me. I'm not even there yet. He calls me. He says, Mr. Barr, I'm sorry. The owner's not willing to divide the land into parcels. You need to buy the whole site. And I said, well, Gregor, we're out then. That's too much for us. We can't do that. And to be honest, part of it was the money, and part of it was we don't need 3 1/3 acres. You know, we see that last bit there where I was saying, do we ask him only to answer our prayers, or do we rise to his vision? God has blown our vision out the water so many times in this. So we are imagining, we'll get a little church, we'll get it up to about 100. We've never seen a church in Scotland more than 100. Gets to about 100 and then waxes and wanes up and down a little bit. And so that's all I knew. That's all I imagined. All right. Anyway, I said, we're out. And then this is what he said. This is a quote. He said, I know I said $1 million. What if I told you you could buy the whole site for something beginning with a 3? And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I still get goosebumps when I'm talking about it. I remember that call. And just so you know, when he's saying something beginning with a 3, I'm thinking 301. All right. Scots are renowned for being very thrifty. Some would say tight. All right. They say we only open our sporran twice. Did you know that? Once to put our money in, wants to check it's still there. And that's about how we deal with spending money, all right? So I'm thinking 301, he's probably thinking 390. I figured we could sort that later. I remember thinking that in my head. And so I said, Gregor, can you give me a few days? I need to speak to some of my colleagues. He still doesn't know it's the church. And one of the elders of our sponsoring congregation in Huntsville was due over on, this was a Friday, he was due over on the Tuesday for a seminar that we were hosting. So he came, he said, that's fine. I said, I'll call you on the Tuesday. The elder came over on the Tuesday. We went down there Tuesday afternoon, and he's like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You guys have got to go for this. We're 100% behind you. It was just crazy. What, why, how? Down to 300,000. So we're getting excited. I called Gregor, and I said, Gregor, right, we're in. We're interested. And he said, great. So are 5 others. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I said, what do you need us to do? I was hoping we wouldn't have competition. And he said, you need to get a legal offer into my desk by Thursday lunchtime, less than 48 hours. I had no clue what we were doing, but we got someone to help us, got in touch with their lawyer, got it ready. Anyway, we got it in on time. That was October 2017. And we waited for a couple of months. In that couple of months, we found out the other 5 were all commercial. So we were the only what they call non-profit. The rest were businesses. And we knew that their offers would blow us away. I don't even know if he told them the whole 3 thing. All right, he's probably just wait and see what they offer. So we did offer 301. All right, we figured if God wants us to have this, it's not going to matter if we offer 399 or 301, so we offered 301. And there's 20% sales tax, so the total was 361, but the offer was 301. And we waited for just over 2 months. We got a phone call. We're just about to head up to the church building for the New Year's party. We have one every year. And Gregor calls and he said, Mr. Barr, and he knows it's the church now because it's in the offer. Mr. Barr, I'm pleased to tell you the Cumbernauld Church of Christ has been given preferred bidder status for the land at Auchenkilns. I couldn't believe it. I should have believed it, but I couldn't believe it. I says, okay, great. What do we do? What do we do now? We had no clue. And he says, well, we just need to talk about payment. He says, when can you pay? Now, I'm not exaggerating. You can think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. And you're going to think I'm an idiot, and maybe I am. We had never, ever once contemplated payment. Never even thought about it. And so he says, when can you pay? And I'm just making stuff up. So I just said, end of March. I had no idea if we could pay end of March. It's just what I told him. And he kind of snorted and he said, Mr. Barr, 4 of these other 5 offers are ready to pay tomorrow. And all of them are much higher than yours. I said, Gregor, I don't know what to tell you. You now know this is the church. So this is the Lord's money. I know that probably doesn't mean anything in your circles, but we have to do what you would call due diligence. I said, we have to make sure it can be rezoned because our zoning laws are very strict. All right. And they don't just, it wasn't zoned for a place of worship. And it wasn't a no-brainer. Do you use that phrase? Okay. I used some phrases at New Concord and they didn't know what I meant. So no-brainer. So it's not just automatic that they'll rezone it. I said, we have to find that out. I said, secondly, and you'll know this, we have to get a coal report done because there was so many coal mines in Scotland back in the day that anytime you buy a piece of land anywhere, you have to get a coal report to make sure there's no disused shafts under the land, okay? So he would have known that. That was reasonable. I said, the third thing, Gregor, just going to be honest with you, we don't actually have any money. And he didn't like that one. That didn't go down well. And he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice, and he said, Mr. Barr, I'm going to have to go back and speak to the owner again and the bank. First time the bank's been mentioned. I said, okay, you got to do what you got to do, but that's where we are. We can't do anything else. And I hung up the phone, and half of me's thinking, well, that's it over. You know, if this guy needs money, the bank's now in it, the bank pushing him, and he needs to get rid of a piece of land to get them the money. So what are you going to do as a business person, right? What makes sense? But at the same time, why did he give it to us in the first place? The lowest possible offer. It didn't make sense. So we just kept praying about it. And he called me back 3 days later. I could almost hear him laughing on the phone. And he said, Mr. Barr, the bank and the owner have agreed to wait until the end of March. They didn't even negotiate anything else, just said they were going to wait. So I'm like, great. We kicked into gear. We raised as much money as we could over there. I came over here in February 2018. We're talking to our congregations that help us all the time, been helping us for years. Congregations, Huntsville, Nashville, different congregations have been behind us the whole time. And they knew what we were trying to do. So I'm over here talking to them, and they're saying, oh, this is great. You know, they love the church there. They love the work. And they're like, yes, we're right behind you. And we were really full of confidence. I said to the New Concord ones this morning, we were full of beans. They said, you don't use that expression, do you? You know that? I thought you would have used that over here. Maybe they didn't understand what I was saying. So we were ready to go. I mean, this is ours. I'm talking to them. Graham called, my co-worker. He called me at the end of the first week in March. And I've got an airline ticket to the end of March. And I'm over here telling everyone, brethren, I don't know what's happening. God is doing something. And I don't say that lightly. I don't jump on the whole it's a God thing very easily, because we don't know. You know, even the Apostle Paul said, who knows, maybe, in Philemon 15. So I don't jump. But this, if you take God out of this, it was making no sense at all. So I'm saying, God's in this. And I'm telling them that. And Graham calls me and he says, Adam, we've got a problem. I said, well, what? He said, they've done an ecological survey, and they have found evidence of 2 protected species on the land. They weren't there, just the evidence, the nests and the droppings from the previous summer. And that's where they nest every summer. They come back and nest there. One of them was the water vole, which is like a big rat. That one wasn't such a big deal. The other one was the great crested newt, about that size. And they move entire interstates not to disturb that little guy. So they're saying to Graham, nobody's building there. And I said, Graham, I'm over here telling everyone God's all over this. I'm just going to have to assume he's got it. And he said, yeah, okay, carry on. So that next week, I told everyone the same story, told them about the vole and the newt. I said to them, brethren, and most of these people know as well at this point, and they trust us. And I says, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's been doing it up till now. And we're just praying that he takes care about it. Takes care of it. Actually, I was kind of half jokingly praying, you know, that city land that was around the bit that we own. I was praying, God, can you move the vole and the newt over to the city land and just have them live there? I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. So Graham calls me back in a week. So it's now middle of March. He says, okay, the council have come up with a compromise. They're asking if we will section off 25% of the land and let the vole and the newt live there undisturbed, and we can build on the rest of the land. Now, you've got to remember, we're getting a $6 million piece of land for $500,000. So in my head, I'm like, Graham, why are you even phoning me? Tell them, yes, we will build them a house with our own hands if that's what it takes to make them happy there. They'll be very comfortable. So we were happy with that. But then the guy who had helped us find the lawyer didn't ask us, didn't tell us. He goes back to the realtor and says, I don't know what he said, but it was something along the lines of, this isn't fair. The church has bought this land. Here's 25% of it they're not going to get to use because of the vole and the newt. And he comes out of their office with another 25% discount on the price of the land. So at that point, the land is now about $350,000 for a $6 million piece of land. So we got the money raised. It was fine. I flew home at the end of March. We got it signed and sealed. The land is ours. We own it. Come the summer, the vole didn't show up. The newt didn't show up. I don't know where they're living now. It's not on our land. You know, they're happy somewhere else. And so we don't have to section off any of the land, right? So we got all of that, 3 1/3 acres for the $350,000. Meanwhile, we're still in this little building that you saw earlier on. And we know we're going to outgrow it, and we know this isn't going to be a short-term project. So when I got back at the end of March, I got a phone call from the guy who manages the local town centre. Now, we're not growing fast. It's a baptism a year. Sometimes none, occasionally 2. One year we had 3 baptisms. That was a big year. We were excited then. So that's the kind of pace. But we are growing. So he calls me and he says, Adam, how would you guys like a free office up at the town centre where the shopping mall is? And we were we were up to here with all this. And I said, no, I can't think of one other thing. It's wrong time, Alistair. I'll just leave it. And then a couple of days later, I felt bad. And I thought, maybe this is another door that God's opening and we should really go up and see what they have to offer. Now, I thought the office would be, like a one-man office, like an office you would have in a small room in your house, you know. And I said to my father-in-law, Jack, he was working part-time, semi-retired with us. I said, Jack, let's go up and see. We can maybe put a table and a couple of chairs in there. People can come in and we can meet new people, build new relationships. That was fine. So he took us into this office block. We're on the third floor, and there's a nice big lobby, probably about as wide as this building. And it's not deep, but it's a good big lobby. And there was a girl sitting there typing away. And he took us into a room that's about the size of this room. And there's people working away. We're waiting for him to show us our office, and he's got his back to us. And there's me and Jack standing behind him. And he said, so this would be yours, and this is free. And I'm saying to Jack, I'm trying not to be too excited in case he changes his mind about the free part. And I'm like, we could worship in here. He's like, I know. So we took it, obviously. Coming off that room, it's got its own kitchen, its own toilets. It's got 4 rooms we use for Bible classes. We got the big lobby area as well. That was ours. 2 other big rooms that we use for teens and adult class. A big room that we use for the office. We've got all our curriculum and photocopier and all that kind of stuff. Absolute fantastic, free of charge. It's not very visible. People find it hard to locate, and it's in poor condition. We spent a little bit of money on it because we knew we'd be in it a few years, but it allowed us to grow, and we're still growing slowly. So we sectioned it off and put dividers, say about here. One half, it's got tables and chairs set up permanently for fellowship, because we fellowship a lot. We're together a lot. And then the other half set up with chairs for worship, and that's working fine. Then we hit COVID, and the building design in the back of the books that you'll see was almost ready. It was going to cost about $1.5 million to $2 million, which for us was like a lot of money. And we're thinking, but at the same time, what God had done and the doors he'd opened, we're thinking, this is it. He's doing this. We just have to trust him. So again, full of beans, ready to go. We can do this. Let's get it done. It was that kind of way. In fact, on this trip, a couple of weeks ago, I was telling this story, and it just struck me. It hadn't struck me before. It's kind of like Moses, right? Because when he was 40, Moses was full of beans. He was ready to free the Israelites. I'm going to do this. We're going to take them out. And God had to humble him. Well, God did that with us, because when we came out of COVID, that $2 million building was $6 million, just like that. The architect changed some things, got it down to about 5, but we're still like, we can't do that. That's beyond us. And it took some of our elders to say, look what's happened. Look where God's brought you. Look what he's done up till now. That's what's happened after COVID. Everything's gone up. You don't know what he's going to do after that. And they're right. So we moved from we can't do this to we can't do this, but God can. And so now we're just telling everyone about it and letting him open the doors. And there's so many stories on this trip. I was with a congregation down in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and they hadn't realized it was for a building. So he calls me on the Friday and says, Adam, I'm really sorry. And I was due there on the Sunday. He says, I'm really sorry, we don't do buildings. This looks great. We wish you all the best, but we don't help with buildings. Well, long story short, they are donating. They changed their policy. They're given to the building. They gave us about a dozen other contacts of people to go and see. And there's most of the mission committee are signing up for Highlanders for Christ, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So God just knocked the end out of that. That should have been a dead end, and God just smashed it down. And he's doing that all the way. Now, we're still growing slowly back at that point. But then, so we are dealing with all of the same moral issues that you guys deal with. And our government love it. Our government is so secular. So all of the morality issues, the LGBTQ, the gender stuff, the abortion stuff, all of that and much more, where everyone is being so aggressive about. You see it on Facebook. They're all shouting. They're all angry. This is my rights. And you recognize them. And it's just really hostile. And we're getting that. Only the government are promoting it. okay? So what's happening now is, you see all those families that we were babysitters for, all right, and they love us. Well, now they weren't interested in God, most of them. And now you can almost hear them thinking, saying, still not sure about this God part, don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I sure don't want my kids on this track. And they are now looking at God's way as the way that they want their kids to be brought up. And they're coming along as well. So we had, in 2023, we had one baptism. In 2024, we baptized 12 into Christ and had several restorations. Never seen anything like it. Last year we baptized 7 and had several restorations. This year we've baptized 4 already, including a pastor, a Nigerian pastor of the Pentecostal church, baptized an assistant pastor of the Pentecostal church the year before, and it's just going crazy. If we don't meet another soul this year, we will have at least another 6 or 7 baptisms, just the ones we're studying with right now. But that's not going to happen because we had Bring a Friend, we call it Bring a Friend Sunday, Bring a Neighbour Sunday, something like that, yeah. We have a few of them a year. And we had our first one this year while I was here, about 3 weeks ago. And I was on Zoom with them, and I looked, and all the dividers that were separating the fellowship and the worship, they're all gone. They've moved, tables are put away, place is packed. And I said to my wife, I said, Melanie, how many were there? And she counted up, and we had 30 first or second time visitors to our worship that Sunday. God is just going crazy with this. I've contemplated actually praying for him to slow down a little, because we're finding it hard to keep up. We have to change how we work and delegate more. We're not really good at that, so we're going to have to do that. So I told you about Highlanders for Christ because I was, last September when I was over, I was in the home of one of the elders of the Winchester Church of Christ. They help us on a monthly basis, have done for years. And so I was preaching there in the morning, and I was in his house for dinner, and he said, Adam, you're going to have to come up with a different plan. He says, the way you're doing it, you're not moving the needle. You're trying to raise $5 million. And what about if you go all these places and say you average 1, 2, 5,000? You're going to be doing this forever. And I knew he was right. So I was on my way to Smithville. I was preaching at Smithville, Tennessee that night. And I was trying to come up with something different. So I came up with this idea just in September. And the numbers are just an example. It's the pattern, it's the system. I said to myself, if we could get 1,000 Christians who can pledge $25 a month for 5 years, that's $1.5 million. So I'm thinking, using his language, I'm thinking that's moving the needle. That's a moving the needle amount. You know, and it's allowing an amount that's accessible to many Christians who think they can't do much, and yet they can do this and have this big impact, you know. So that's what I'm going to launch this at Smithville. They're going to be the first ones to hear about this. And I had to come up with a name for it. It was something to call them. And it came, 30 seconds, came up with a name. The Klansmen. I'm going to call them the Klansmen. No, not in the South. And I'd been in the South long enough to know that. And I was like, what? I changed it. Anyway, I changed it to the Highlanders. I still love the clan. So it's Klansman with a C, but it sounds the same when you say it. And clan is family in Scotland, you know. So I really wanted to call it that, but anyway, it won't work over here. So and I told the Smithville ones, I said, y'all were almost a Klansman, and they laughed. But so people are really buying into that. That mission committee in Dallas that wouldn't help with buildings, half of them, or more than half of them, are wanting in on the Highlanders for Christ. I had a guy 2 weeks ago, he says, Adam, I can't help you just now financially, but give me 7 of those cards. My commitment's going to be, I'm going to find you 7 Highlanders for Christ. People are just helping in all sorts of ways. I was with Central Church in Tuscaloosa a couple of weeks ago as well. I was with the elders and the head of the mission committee, and they just love it. He's called me 3 times, including today, since I left. And he said, have you got any more of those cards? I says, yeah. He says, yeah, I want 100. And the elder was like, 100. And he says, yeah, I'm telling everyone about this. And they are. People are just going off and just, they're really getting behind us. So that's what's happening in Scotland. Pray for us, all right? Pray for us. Tell everyone. I'm going to leave some of these as well, and I've got more of them in the car. Anyone can have one. Tell everyone, share it with anyone you want. You've scanned the QR code there. It's got the video, and it's got a digital copy of the book as well, if we run out of books. And, you know, if the church can help us, great. If individuals want to help us on Highlanders for Christ, great. Come over and see it for yourself. Not all at the same time, but yeah, all welcome to come over. Okay, so that's what's happening. Now, I want you to go back to Genesis chapter 50, and let's read verse 20. Oh, and by the way, I nearly forgot. We have a Facebook page, Highlanders for Christ, all right? And I'm going to take a picture of you guys, and by this time tomorrow, you will be on it, on our Highlanders for Christ page, just because you're praying for us. Everyone look this way. Pretend you're happy. There you go, okay. Right, so you'll be on there. Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. This is one of my favourite passages. And you know the story of Joseph. You know it well. And you're probably familiar with this part of it. So Joseph has been through all his stuff. Sold by his brothers, betrayed by Potiphar's wife, forgotten by the baker and the butler and Pharaoh, but then rose to power. The famines, the plenties happened, the famines happened. All the family are now down in Egypt, all right? But Jacob's just died. And now the brothers are like, now that Dad's gone, Joseph's he's going to do his in. He's going to have his way. And so that's where we break into that part in the conversation. In verse 20, Joseph speaks up and he said, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." That word for meant, or some of your versions may say intended. You intended it for evil. You meant it for evil. It's a Hebrew word that's pronounced, as far as I know, koshab. Koshab. And it literally means to weave or pleat. So like if a girl or a lady is pleating her hair, and you get it all fancy and in the design that you want and looking the way you want and it's nice, that's the word they would use. Or weave, this is the word they would use. So Joseph is saying to his brothers, you were weaving evil. And I love that, because I think that's a good picture of what his brothers were doing. You know, I can actually picture them sitting down. Here comes Joseph. What are we going to do? Right, okay, well, we've got him. We're going to kill him. No, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in the pit. Let's sell. You know, they're weaving it. You can see it. You can picture it. They're weaving evil. What are we going to tell Dad? Oh, kill an animal, rip the coat. All of it. It's weaving the fabric, weaving the strands. And then he says, but when you were weaving evil, God was reweaving. And the reason that I want to bring that up to you tonight, this is my wife, Melanie. We were up, I think it was last year actually, up in the Isle of Skye. It's an island off the west coast of Scotland, beautiful. We were just up there for a few days. We were driving around and we saw this little sign for Skye Weavers. And we went in, and the little guy in the background there, it was just him, and he'd built a shed, and he'd put up some kind of homemade loom and connected it to a bicycle thing. And he just sits there and cycles, and he weaves the blankets. And it's really cool. And so he gave Melanie a shot, and Melanie's a worrier, so she was like, I don't want it. I said, go have a shot. And she was like worrying she was going to ruin it, so it lasted about 10 seconds. But she's pedaling away, and I'm watching this thing going back and forward, the shuttle, shoom, 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 like that. And this blanket was building up pretty quickly. And I was surprised at how quickly it was. So I said to the guy, how long will it take you to weave a metre of fabric? You familiar with meters? We're okay with meters? Okay. How long will it take you to weave a metre of fabric? He says, about 20 minutes. That really shocked me. I thought it'd be longer than that. So I said, and I told him that. I said, that really surprises me. He says, yeah, but you see all those threads? See the threads at the top? And he says, do you know how long it takes me to set those threads the way they need to be? I says, no. 3 days. 3 days to set the threads, 20 minutes a metre of fabric. And Melanie got off and he got back on and he's pedalling away faster than Melanie. And he's just watching the whole time and he's talking to us and his fingers in there and he's sorting a strand there and he's moving it under there if it wasn't right. Constant. And it made me think of this passage in Genesis 50 verse 20. You know, the time and attention and care that God puts in to setting things in place for our lives must be incredible. We know the passage in Romans 8 verse 28, for God works all things together for good for those who love the Lord. That's all things. We kind of brush over that sometimes. It's all things. You're going to have a thing when you leave here. There's going to be a thing in your life when you leave here tonight. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, there's going to be a thing. All right? God's going to be working in that. God's going to be weaving in that. All right? So he is the time and care and attention that he has taken to set it, and then the time and care and attention he has while that thing's weaving, his fingers in there all the time, making sure things go where he wants them. He's weaving in your life every minute of every day. We have a saying in Scotland where we say the enemy, you know, the enemy that we have never takes a day off. You say that? Never. Neither does our God. Our God never takes 1 minute of one day off. He is in your life, weaving every single... I want you to think about that. And when you get up tomorrow morning, I want you to maybe have the presence of mind to say, well, God, I don't know what you're going to weave today, but I know you're doing it. And if you want me to see it, great. And if you don't, just let me trust that it's there. And let me be aware of it. Because it's a promise. It's guaranteed. That's the kind of God we have. Now, sometimes we may have been Christians so long, or we may be experiencing so many pressures in life that we can't see the weaving of God, and that we've forgotten that he is even doing it or has promised to do it. I want you to remind yourself that he's doing that. If you want to, we're going to sing a song, aren't we? Yeah. I know this family would love to pray with you and for you if that's something that would help you, whatever you're going through, right? To recognize the weaving of God in that thing. He's not making it happen, but he's weaving in it, whatever it is, good or bad. Maybe you're not even a Christian. Maybe you think, well, it doesn't apply to me because I'm not a Christian. No, he's weaving in your life whether you like it or not. Every single thing God does is about getting you home, about forgiving anything that you think might be unforgivable, about taking away anything that is suffocating you, causing you to be unable to breathe or have the peace that he wants you to have, and take you home. That's the kind of God that we have, if you will just believe that he is doing that. And join yourself to his son in the waters of baptism. And I know that, again, this family are going to be more than ready to help you do that. And if that is your position, any of those positions, any of those situations, don't leave this place without taking care of that. Come down and let that be known, or speak to one of the men at the end, but don't leave. God's weaving, recognize it, cooperate with him as we stand and sing.